what are you doing back there, right, that you think we should actually be emulating as far as making music profitable and adding up to the GDPs of our economies?
I think for us, I would say we are taking advantage of our population and the different platforms and avenues that we can make money. One of the examples I would give is with telcos and different platforms. So what we do is we have aggregators. So it's not just from show promotions and, you know, performing and touring, which is great, but we don't have a lot of that yet, you know. So what we try to do is we have conversations with these aggregators that help us get better deals with companies like YouTube and Spotify and all those other companies. So whether there's a downward spiral of, you know, music sales in terms of albums, physical albums and all of that, you're still making money from streaming, you know. So it's basically positioning your marketing to make sure that you have more audience with Nigerians living in the country and Nigerians in the diaspora
outside of the country,
and Africa as well, you know, to make sure that either way you're earning some amount of money, you know, that can still keep you afloat.
Right, but you see, these are two parties involved, and there's the musicians creating the content, and there's these corporate companies accepting and saying that, yes, we are happy to actually work with you. So what's the real secret? Because, I mean, most artists in other parts of Africa struggle to actually make their content relevant to corporate companies. So what's the trick there?
Well, you know, funny enough, I was having a conversation with someone backstage, really, and we were talking about artists here and how they can expand, you know, in terms of making money. And I was giving him an example of myself, because I guess that's the best example, that there are times when it's really, you know, someone tells you, okay, more views get you more money. But I look at the peculiarity of my career in the brand. And what I do is I create campaigns for companies. I go find out what the company is about and tell them, say, okay, this is your vision, this is where you're going, and I'm a global voice. I'm an African singer, I'm a Nigerian singer, and I have these statistics based on the number of people I have on Instagram, the number of this. I have a certain group on WhatsApp that I call my fan base. They're like my guerrilla marketers. And these are strategies I have put in place to make sure that I'm earning money whether I'm touring or not. So I go and meet the company and say, this is what I can offer you. So let's do this campaign to help you achieve your goal, and this is what you're going to pay me. And so far, it's really worked for me. So I think that for every artist, depending on your, you know, your demographic and where you find yourself, is really looking for what works for you as an entertainer. Because as you know, in a country you want to expand, but you also have to think outside your country, because there are also people who are willing to buy into your brand as well.
Cast the net wider.
Yes.
That's the thing. But let's see this, because earlier on in the program we spoke about the place of arts in creating jobs. And of course we understand that in the next decade, Africa's population is going to be booming and also exploding. But the need for African governments and leaders to actually see this entertainment and arts as one of the solutions to creating jobs. What sort of messages would you be giving if your government leaders or those watching us today and their policymakers are listening to you and they had your ear? What sort of things would you be telling them?
I'll be telling them that there are people that are blessed in our continent, not just with music, writing and singing, but you have sound engineers, you have people behind the cameras, you have people that have studied to make sure. So there's a whole chain of people. You have distributors, you have producers, you have A&Rs. These are different job opportunities that people can excel in. So when you're thinking about building that kind of infrastructure where it accommodates everybody else, that's the sort of thing you should think in mind. For me, in Nigeria, for example, we don't have like a proper studio like the Universal Studio you have, where you can say, I'm working on my album, for example, and I need time out and I don't want to go to Houston or Nashville. I really want to focus and, you know, take myself away from the traffic and all of that and focus. Now, the truth is there are a lot of people that will be, there are a lot of job opportunities in that space, because I just don't need a producer. I need a sound engineer, you know, and if
it's a value chain.
It's a value chain, really. So people have to start looking into that and not just look at the outside of, oh, it's a performance, is this, your sound engineers, I'm doing a show tomorrow.
Social media
and
strategies.
There are a lot, and influencers, and there are a lot of people behind just even videographers and graphic engineers, you know, so it's, the value chain is so much. So it's also having that in mind, knowing that you're creating job opportunities not just for WAJE, who's a musician, but all the people that will make sure that
WAJE.
Exactly.
All right. I mean, I was just looking here, and something very interesting came up as far as the issue of the album sales and the singles sales.
Yes.
Of course, there's been a lot of decline in this, and some people would be talking about the fact that technology is somehow making it difficult for those who are relying on album sales and the singles. Is it safe to say?
Is it really? That's honestly, that's an honest question I'm also asking. Because the reason why I say that is because there's definitely a certain, everything is about the numbers, right? So it depends on actually the position that you put yourself. If I have 1 million streams on a platform that is just listening to WAJE, I'm earning money from that. You understand? But physical CDs, I can't really say how many copies were actually sold, especially in my country where piracy is such a huge problem. So I feel that even, this kind of situation that we have now where you have platforms that sell your music based on technology and all of that has sort of created the answer that we need in place of piracy. Because then I can say on Spotify, I had 500 streams so I can focus and strategize and tell myself that, okay, to project for this album, I want 2 million streams, and I advertising and marketing to make sure that I get that, because I know the amount I can project and say this is the amount of money I'm going to be making from that. So I really don't know if that's really an issue. Yeah.
So in the end, probably then, the people who are religiously relying on selling their singles and the albums, what sort of message would you be telling them in order to diversify? I know we've touched a bit on that in the beginning of this conversation, but what sort of message would you be telling them?
I'll be telling them that it's basically, like I said before, finding a strategy that works for you. Some artists are single artists. Is that the strategy that works for you? Some artists are album artists. But I think that if you focus on your fan base and the strategy, the marketing strategy that you're going to use to, sort of boost your sales, you'll be able to know how many albums and how much you can project and say, okay, this is the amount of money I'm going to make. Because remember, again, that is not just about the people that live in your country, but it's also about the continent and people that live outside the continent.
Right. Of course, I understand that WAJE is actually an acronym for words
aren't just
enough. And so we've actually spoken, and we've just been speaking about words. And so it's not enough to finish this conversation without what you do best, and that's an a cappella. There's a very great song that we did with Lyra, Mountains.
Yes. Oh, yes.
It's very encouraging, and I want you to just give us a sneak bit out of it.
If you follow what's in them talk, you no go make come at all. If you follow what's in them do, you no go make come at all. When you see the mountain, you gonna climb it, you gonna climb. When you're gonna climb it, you're gonna climb, ooh, you're gonna climb it, oh.
Right. Thank you so much, WAJE.